Let's begin with a simple truth. You can't control the market. You can't control what happens next, but you can control how you respond. And that's where everything changes. The idea of never losing money doesn't mean you'll never take a loss. That's impossible. It means you'll never lose yourself in the process of taking one. Because the real loss doesn't happen in your account. It happens in your mind. Every time you react emotionally, every time you trade from fear or revenge, you're giving away control. The market becomes your teacher, and the lesson repeats until you learn it. The only way to never lose money is to stop fighting the idea of loss. Accept it, embrace it as part of the process. When you stop resisting the inevitable, you stop losing emotionally. And when you stop losing emotionally, your actions become consistent. Think of it like this: professional. Traders don't need to know what will happen next. They only need to know how they will behave when it does. That's power, that's control, that's the edge. Every outcome is just information. Every mistake is just data. Every trade, every decision, it's feedback that sharpens your discipline and deepens your belief in process over prediction. When you operate from that mindset, you've already won, because the game stops being about money and starts being about mastery. And the one who masters themselves never truly loses. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid losing. Followed your plan perfectly, and the market simply behaved differently this time. Because probability doesn't guarantee outcome. Once you truly understand that, you stop feeling attacked by the result. When you stop defining yourself by outcomes, something powerful happens. You become free. Free to act without hesitation. Free to follow your plan without fear. Free to see the truth without distortion. Losing no longer feels like losing. Become with that uncertainty, the more power you gain. The person who fears losing can't act decisively. They hesitate, overanalyze, and miss opportunities. The person who accepts that losing is just part of the process, moves freely. They make decisions quickly, adapt fluidly, and stay focused on the long game. Most people think success comes from having the perfect strategy, the perfect entry, or the perfect system. But perfection is an illusion. The real key to success is mindset, specifically how you respond to imperfection. When you make peace with losing, you stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, you start flowing with it. The market is just energy in motion. Your job is not to control it, but to align yourself with it. To never lose money, you must stop defining loss in emotional terms. Money can be gained or lost. That's the nature of the game. But psychological capital, emotional control, and discipline, those are the true assets. Every time you stay calm, after a losing trade, you're compounding psychological capital. Every time you stick to your plan despite uncertainty, you're building trust in yourself. Every time you learn from a loss, instead of resisting it, you're becoming more resilient over time. That inner strength translates directly into external results. So the next time you experience a loss in trading, business, or life, pause for a moment. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" That simple shift changes everything. It turns pain into power, confusion into clarity, and loss into growth. You realize that losing was never the problem. The real problem was your definition of losing. Once that changes, the fear disappears. The frustration fades. And what's left is pure awareness. The ability to see things as they truly are without distortion. That's when you stop chasing perfection. You stop needing to be, right? You start focusing on being aligned, being consistent, being present. You begin to operate with the confidence of someone who knows that no single trade, no single decision defines their future. Because when your mindset is aligned with truth, there's no such thing as losing, only learning, only growing, only becoming more attuned to the flow of probability and opportunity. When you reach that point, you've transcended the emotional traps that hold most people back. You're no longer afraid of the market, of uncertainty, or of failure. You realize that losing isn't the opposite of winning, it's part of winning. Every loss was simply a stepping stone leading you closer to mastery. And in that realization, you finally understand what it truly means to never lose money. In the world of trading and decision-making, most people believe that their success depends on their ability to predict outcomes. They think that if they can just know what will happen next, they'll finally feel safe in control, confident. But that illusion is the very thing that keeps them trapped. Because the moment your sense of security depends on an outcome, you've already given your power away. You've placed your emotional stability in the hands of something you can't control. And the truth is, the market doesn't owe you certainty. It doesn't owe you clarity, fairness, or reward. It will do whatever it wants to do, and your only real freedom lies in how you respond to it. Detaching emotion from outcome doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop needing the outcome to feel okay. It means you stop letting the result define your worth, your skill, or your progress. Most traders and most people tie their emotional state directly to performance. When they win, they feel confident and capable. When they lose, they feel anxious and uncertain. That emotional roller coaster is exhausting. It destroys consistency, clouds judgment, and creates a cycle of reaction instead of calm execution. The only way to break that cycle is to accept that outcomes are neutral. They don't define you. They simply reflect the interaction between your behavior and the market's movement. Think of the market as a mirror. It shows you exactly where your beliefs, fears, and impulses stand in relation to reality. When you attach emotion to the outcome, you distort that reflection. You see what you want to see, not what's actually there. You start hoping instead of observing, fearing instead of executing. But when you detach, you start seeing clearly. You realize that the market is not your opponent. It's not against you, and it's not for you. It simply exists. Your job is not to predict or control it, but to align with it through discipline, patience, and objectivity. Most traders believe that emotional control comes from winning more. They think that if they could just start having more successful trades, they'd finally feel calm. But that's backward. Emotional control doesn't come after success. It comes before it. True consistency begins the moment you stop being emotionally affected by winning or losing. Because once you detach from the need for any single outcome, you free your mind to execute flawlessly. You can follow your plan with precision, not because you know what will happen next, but because you trust your process. When you make a decision, a trade, a business move, or any commitment, there are only two things you can control: your preparation and your response. Everything else is uncertainty. You can do your analysis perfectly, but the outcome is still governed by probability. You might have an 80% edge, but that still means 20% of the time you'll lose. If you can't emotionally accept that 20%, you'll never be able to trade that 80% effectively. The moment you tie your emotions to the result, you create fear. Fear of loss, fear of being wrong, fear of missing out. And fear leads to hesitation, impulsive decisions, and self-sabotage. Detaching emotion from outcome is not about becoming cold or robotic. It's about becoming free. It's about developing a quiet confidence rooted in process, not in results. When you execute a trade according to your plan and it loses, that's still a success. You acted in alignment with your rules. You respected probability. You stayed consistent. That's all that matters. If you define success by process, not outcome, you create a stable foundation for growth. But if you define success by outcome, your foundation will always be unstable because outcomes fluctuate. The truth is, emotional attachment is rooted in expectation. The stronger your expectation of a specific result, the stronger your emotional reaction when it doesn't happen. You can't control the market, but you can control your expectations. When you release the need for things to go a certain way, you stop creating internal resistance. The present moment becomes clear and fluid again. You act, you observe, you adjust. You don't force, you don't chase, you don't react. That's what it means to trade in the zone, a state of effortless flow where you're fully engaged but emotionally detached. To reach that state, you must train your mind to accept uncertainty as normal. Most people fear uncertainty because they associate it with danger. But uncertainty is simply the natural state of all markets and of life itself. Every moment contains infinite possibilities. Trying to control that is impossible. The moment you accept it, you stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, peace enters, the noise fades, the need to be right disappears. You act not to avoid pain or to chase pleasure, but because your plan tells you it's time to act. That's the discipline that creates consistency. Every time you let an outcome affect your emotions, you're reinforcing the belief that your happiness depends on external events. Over time, that belief drains your energy. You start chasing the market, trying to force it to validate you. but the market doesn't valid. 81. It's indifferent. The only validation that matters comes from within, from knowing you did what you were supposed to do, regardless of result. That's true confidence. That's what separates a professional mindset from an amateur. 1. Emotional detachment is also about trust. Trusting your edge, your preparation, and your ability to adapt. You don't need to know what will happen next. You just need to know that you'll follow your rules, manage your risk, and execute without hesitation. When you operate from that mindset, you become unstoppable. Not because you always win, but because losing doesn't shake you. You become consistent because your behavior is no longer influenced by short-term outcomes. Every action you take builds long-term results through the power of probability. You'll notice that the more emotionally detached you become, the less dramatic trading feels. There's no more rush, no more panic, no more emotional highs or lows. It becomes simple, almost boring. That's the paradox of mastery. The excitement fades, but the results grow because the goal isn't to feel stimulated by trading. It's to feel centered. Professionals don't trade for excitement. They trade for consistency. They've learned that emotional neutrality is the foundation of sustainable success. Imagine what it would feel like to approach every trade without anxiety. To see the setup, execute your plan, and accept whatever happens next without emotional turbulence. That's freedom. That's detachment. When you operate from that place, you stop trying to prove anything to yourself or anyone else. You're not trying to win. You're simply following probabilities. And because of that, you end up winning more often with less stress and fewer mistakes. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means balance. It means caring deeply about your craft, your discipline, and your process, but not about any single trade, any single outcome. It's about doing your job well and letting the results take care of themselves. Every trade becomes just another expression of your edge. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you move on. You neither celebrate nor mourn. You simply observe and adjust. The real challenge is training your emotions to follow your logic. You can understand detachment intellectually, but until you practice it repeatedly, through real trades, real wins, real losses, your emotions will still resist. You must condition yourself through experience. Every time you react calmly to a losing trade, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that loss is not danger, that uncertainty is safe. Over time, that emotional conditioning builds a powerful sense of inner peace, and from that peace, clarity emerges. You start to see patterns more easily, not because you become smarter, but because your perception is no longer clouded by fear or greed. The market hasn't changed. You have. You're no longer interpreting data through emotional bias. You're simply responding to what's there. That clarity is where your true edge lies. It's not in predicting what will happen next, but in perceiving what's happening now and responding without interference. When you reach that level of detachment, trading stops feeling like a battle. It becomes an exercise in awareness. You don't fight the market, you flow with it. You don't try to control outcomes, you control your response to them. You stop seeking certainty and start embracing probability. And as you do, your performance stabilizes. You stop overtrading, stop forcing trades, stop chasing the need to make up losses. You become consistent because your mind is consistent. Ultimately, detaching emotion from outcome is about reclaiming your power. As long as your happiness depends on what happens outside of you, you'll be a slave to circumstances. But when you anchor your peace within, when your satisfaction comes from discipline, process, and self-mastery, nothing can shake. You, wins and losses, become background noise. You move through the market with calm confidence, knowing that no single result defines you. This mindset doesn't just apply to trading, it applies to everything in life. Relationships, careers, goals, all are governed by the same principle. The more you attach to a specific outcome, the more suffering you create. The more you let go, the more free you become. Detachment isn't about apathy. It's about trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in the process and trust in the flow of life. When you finally detach emotion from outcome, you stop living reactively. You stop being pulled by the highs of winning and the lows of losing. You find balance. You find presence. And From that stillness, your true potential unfolds, because now you're no longer chasing control. You are control. The market becomes a reflection of your inner state, and when your inner state is calm, disciplined, and detached, your results follow naturally. That's when trading becomes effortless. That's when life becomes simple. That's when you realize that detachment isn't about losing emotion. It's about gaining freedom. And in that freedom, you find the space to perform at your highest level, consistently, calmly, and without fear. Every trader believes they're playing a game against the market. But the truth is, the market is never the opponent. The real opponent is internal. Your beliefs, your fears, your impulses, your expectations. Every time you sit in front of the screen, you're not competing with other traders. You're competing with yourself. The battle is not between you and price action. It's between your discipline and your emotions, your logic and your impulses, your patience and your need for instant gratification. Mastering the inner game means learning how to bring those opposing forces into harmony. It means learning to act with clarity in an environment designed to trigger your deepest insecurities. The outer world, the charts, the price, the volatility is just a mirror reflecting your inner world. Whatever is unresolved inside of you will show up in your trading. If you're impatient, the market will expose it. If you're fearful, the market will amplify it. If you're arrogant, the market will humble you. Every emotion you suppress finds its way to the surface when money is on the line. That's why trading is such a powerful teacher. It reveals you to yourself. Most people think trading is about developing better strategies, but real mastery begins when you start studying your own psychology with the same precision you study the markets. To master the inner game, you must first accept full responsibility for everything that happens in your trading. Every decision, every outcome, every emotional reaction, they're all yours. Most traders look for something or someone to blame when things go wrong. The market makers, the algorithm, the news, bad luck. But the moment you blame something external, you give away your power. You become a victim of circumstances instead of a master of your craft. The truth is, the market doesn't do anything to you. It simply reflects your level of readiness and emotional balance. Once you understand that, you stop looking outward for answers and start looking inward. The inner game begins with awareness. Awareness of what you believe about risk, success, failure, uncertainty. These beliefs shape your behavior more than any system or indicator ever could. For example, if you subconsciously believe that losing money means you're a failure, you'll unconsciously avoid losses at all costs, even when that means holding a losing trade far too long. If you believe that winning validates your worth, you'll take unnecessary risk to chase that emotional high. The market doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. Your results are a reflection of your internal state. To change your results, you must first change your relationship with your thoughts and emotions. Self-awareness is the foundation of mastery. You can't control your emotions directly, but you can become aware of them before they control you. The mind loves to react, to protect, to justify, to defend. It's a survival mechanism. But in trading, those instincts can destroy you. The impulse to protect yourself from emotional pain by avoiding stops, by doubling down, by chasing losses is what causes the most damage. Mastering the inner game means developing enough awareness to pause between impulse and action. That small gap, the space between feeling and reacting, is where all your power lies. And that space you can choose. You can choose patience over fear, discipline over impulsiveness, acceptance over resistance. Every time you act consciously instead of reactively, you weaken the emotional patterns that have been controlling you. Over time, those patterns lose power. You begin to feel a sense of inner stillness even while the market is chaotic. You stop needing the market to behave in a certain way for you to feel comfortable. You stop needing certainty. You stop needing to be right. That's when you start trading from a place of truth instead of from a place of fear. True mastery doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt again. It means you no longer let those feelings dictate your behavior. Emotions will always be there. They're part of being human. The difference is, when you've mastered the inner game, emotions become information instead of commands. Fear tells you, ties, not as a threat to your security. You stop needing to make money on every trade and start focusing on making good decisions. When good decisions compound, over time profits follow naturally. The inner game is the invisible structure behind every successful trader's performance. It's what keeps you grounded when the market moves against you. It's what keeps you humble when things are going well. It's what allows you to stay objective when others are panicking. You develop emotional balance not by suppressing your feelings, but by understanding them. The goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to prevent it from controlling your behavior. That balance is the difference between reacting impulsively and acting with precision. To master the inner game, you must learn to think in probabilities, not possibilities. When you think in probabilities, each trade becomes just one of many. You stop giving any single outcome emotional significance. You don't get overly excited when you win or overly discouraged when you lose. You simply record the result, analyze it, and move on. The energy you once spent on emotional swings becomes available for focus, creativity, and execution. That's how consistency is born, not from perfection, but from emotional neutrality. Another key aspect of mastering the inner game is forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself for past mistakes. Many traders carry emotional baggage from losses that still haunt them. They replay those moments in their minds, using them as proof that they can't succeed. But every mistake you've made was part of your learning process. You couldn't have done it differently at that level of awareness. Forgiveness is what releases you from the past and allows you to trade in the present moment, because the market only exists in the now, not in your memories, not in your projections, but right here, right now. Presence is the ultimate state of mastery, when your mind is fully in the present, free from attachment, fear, and regret. Your perception sharpens. You see the market as it is, not as you want it to be. You're no longer distracted by noise, opinions, or external influences. You trust yourself. You act effortlessly, not because you're forcing discipline, but because discipline has become your nature. The market becomes a reflection of your inner calm. And that's when you begin to experience flow. That state where every decision feels natural, every action feels aligned, and time seems to slow down. Mastering the inner game is not a destination. It's a lifelong practice. The more you evolve, the more layers you uncover. Each level of mastery reveals a deeper level of awareness. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming more conscious, more centered, more present. Every challenge, every loss, every setback is an opportunity to strengthen your inner foundation. You don't grow by avoiding discomfort, you grow by facing it with awareness. The market is the greatest mirror you'll ever encounter. It will reflect your fear, your greed, your confidence, and your patience. It will test every belief you hold about yourself. But once you stop seeing those tests as threats and start seeing them as opportunities for growth, everything changes. The game becomes less about winning and more about evolving. You begin to understand that true success isn't about the money you make, but about the person you become in the process. And when you finally reach that level, when your inner world is balanced, your emotions are understood, your beliefs aligned, and your focus rooted in the present, you'll realize something profound. The market was never against you. It was always teaching you how to master yourself, because the one who masters the inner game has already won the outer one. One of the hardest truths for most people to accept is that certainty does not exist in the market. Every tick, every candle, every move is the result of millions of decisions made. Countless participants, each driven by their own beliefs, emotions, and perceptions. The market is a living reflection of collective human behavior, which means it's inherently uncertain, and yet the human mind craves control. We're wired to seek patterns, predictability, and assurance. We want to know what will happen next so we can feel safe. But in trading, that desire for certainty becomes your greatest weakness. The more you chase it, the more it slips away. The more you try to eliminate uncertainty, the more emotionally unstable you become, focusing on probability instead of certainty is what separates a professional mindset from an amateur one. Professionals understand that they don't need to know what's going to happen next to make money. They only need to know that they have an edge, a set of conditions that over time produces consistent results. They execute that edge with discipline, knowing that each trade is just one event in a series of many. Amateurs, on the other hand, approach every trade as if their entire identity depends on its outcome. They treat each position as a test of whether they're right or wrong, successful or a failure. That mindset turns every trade into an emotional battle, and when emotion takes over, probability disappears. To think in probabilities means to operate with acceptance. Acceptance that losses are not only possible but inevitable. It means understanding that every outcome is just one instance in a long series of random distributions. When you enter a trade, you don't know if it will be a winner or a loser. You don't need to know. What matters is that you've executed according to your plan. Once you learn to think this way, the pressure lifts. You stop needing to be right. You just need to be consistent. You start trading what is not what you want to be. Certainty is an illusion created by the ego. The ego wants control because it equates being wrong with personal failure. It can't tolerate uncertainty because uncertainty feels like weakness. But the truth is, the market doesn't reward those who are right. It rewards those who are disciplined. You can be right about direction and still lose money if you manage the trade poorly. You can be wrong about direction and still make money if you manage your risk properly. Probability thinking frees you from the emotional trap of needing to be right. It shifts your focus from outcome to process. When you focus on probability, every trade becomes just one small step in a much larger game. Each trade has its own independent outcome, but collectively they form a pattern. You stop caring about any single trade because you know the next 100 will tell the real story. This mindset creates emotional balance. There's no more panic when a trade goes against you and no more overconfidence when one works perfectly. You stop attaching emotional weight to randomness. You see each result for what it is: data, information, feedback, nothing more. The problem most people face is that they don't truly believe in probability. They only understand it intellectually. They can recite the concept, but deep down they still expect every trade to work out. They might say, I know anything can happen, but when something unexpected does happen, they react emotionally. Frustration, anger, disbelief. That emotional reaction reveals that the belief hasn't been internalized. True belief in probability is emotional, not just intellectual. It's the moment you stop being surprised by outcomes. You no longer think, I can't believe that happened, because you've already accepted that anything can happen. That acceptance is the foundation of peace in trading. Think about it this way. If you flip a coin, you know that each toss is independent. Even if the last 5 tosses were heads, the next toss still has a 50% chance of being tails. Yet, when it comes to trading, people forget this basic principle. They believe that because they've had 3 losing trades, the next one must be a winner, or because they've had a series of winners, the next one should continue the streak. That's the illusion of certainty at work. Probability thinking breaks that illusion. It reminds you that each trade is unique. The past doesn't guarantee the future. It only provides context. When you learn to think in probabilities, your relationship with risk transforms. You stop fearing risk because you've accepted it before entering the trade. You define your risk. You manage it. And once you take the position, you let go. You don't fight the outcome. You don't argue with the market. You allow it to unfold naturally because you know you've already done your job. That's emotional freedom. That's professional discipline. It's the calm that comes from knowing that you're playing a long-term game, not a single event. Focusing on certainty is rooted in fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of losing, fear of missing out. Probability thinking, on the other hand, is rooted in trust. Trust in your edge, in your process, and your ability to execute. When you think in probabilities, you're no longer reacting to what the market does. You're observing it. You're neutral. You can watch the market move against you without panic because you understand that this outcome is just one data point among many. This objectivity gives you clarity. You stop seeing the market emotionally and start seeing it statistically. The irony is that once you stop trying to be certain, your performance improves. When you accept that you don't know what's going to happen, your decisions become cleaner, simpler, more precise. You stop forcing trades. You stop overanalyzing. You act only when your conditions are met, and when they're not, you wait. You no longer feel the urge to prove anything. You become patient, methodical, detached. You start to realize that mastery doesn't come from predicting the future. It comes from managing the present. Every professional trader knows that their success lies in how they manage probabilities, not certainties. They approach the market like a casino approaches its games. The casino doesn't know which individual gambler will win or lose tonight, but it knows with complete confidence that over thousands of plays, the odds are in its favor. That's how you must think. Each trade is like a single roll of the dice. It doesn't matter whether this one wins or loses. What matters is that over many rolls your edge plays out. the more you internalize that truth, the more consistent you become. Probability thinking also protects you from emotional burnout. When you expect certainty, every loss feels personal. You interpret it as failure, but when you accept probability, losses become normal. You don't resist them because you've already accounted for them. That mindset eliminates guilt, shame, and frustration. You no longer waste emotional energy fighting what's inevitable. That freed energy can now be used where it truly matters, refining your edge, improving your discipline, and executing your plan. The market is full of people searching for perfect systems, the one strategy that never fails. But that search is endless, because perfection doesn't exist in a probabilistic environment. Every system has drawdowns, every approach has limitations. The sooner you stop searching for certainty and start mastering probability, the sooner you find peace. The best traders don't have perfect systems. They have perfect discipline. They accept imperfection completely, and that's why they win consistently over time. When you focus on probability, you also stop overreacting to short-term performance. A losing streak doesn't shake your confidence, and a winning streak doesn't inflate your ego. You stay centered. You understand that both are temporary expressions of random distribution. This steadiness allows you to maintain emotional equilibrium, the key to long-term survival. You do in overtrade to chase losses or increase size impulsively after wins. You stay disciplined because discipline is what allows probability to work in your favor. To live by probability is to live without attachment. You no longer cling to outcomes because you understand that no single event defines you. You learn to trust the process, not the moment. You stop demanding that the market behave in a way that supports your expectations. Instead, you align with what the market is showing you. You become adaptive, flexible, open. That mental flexibility is what allows you to thrive in uncertainty while others crumble under its pressure. The ultimate freedom in trading and in life comes when you finally release the need for certainty. When you no longer resist the unknown, you can flow with it. You begin to see that uncertainty isn't the enemy. It's the very condition that makes opportunity possible. Without uncertainty, there would be no movement, no edge, no growth. The people who fear uncertainty are always behind it. The ones who embrace it move ahead of it. Thinking in probabilities is the mindset of mastery. It's the understanding that success doesn't come from predicting outcomes, but from managing yourself within them. It's knowing that you don't control the market, you control your behavior. And as long as your behavior remains consistent, probability will take care of the rest. When you finally internalize this truth, something profound happens. The constant emotional noise, the fear, the doubt, the anxiety begins to fade. You feel calm, even in volatility. You stop hoping for specific outcomes and start responding to reality as it is. You realize that trading was never about being right or wrong. It was about learning to stay balanced in a world that never stops changing. Certainty is an illusion. Probability is truth, and truth is where freedom begins. Once you fully accept that you no longer need the market to behave, you no longer need to know what's coming next. You trust your edge, you trust your process, and you trust yourself. From that trust comes clarity. From that clarity comes consistency. And from that consistency comes everything you were seeking when you first began. In the end, the secret to never losing money lies not in avoiding losses, but in mastering yourself. When you redefine what losing means, detach emotion from outcome. Master the inner game and focus on probability. Instead of certainty, you stop fighting the market and start flowing with it. You no longer trade to win. You trade to execute with clarity and discipline. True success comes when your mind is calm, your process is consistent, and your confidence no longer depends on results. That is when you never truly lose, because you've mastered the only thing that matters: you.